The sound of a loud meow broke through the stillness of the night. It wasn't a soft, playful mew. It was a cry of urgency, almost like a warning. Beth froze, her heart skipping a beat. She looked down at the large tabby cat that had been lounging by the window, its piercing amber eyes locked onto her with an intensity that felt out of place for a pet. This wasn't just any cat. It was strong, confident, and had always been a bit mysterious. She had found it on her doorstep a few weeks ago, hungry and cold. Despite its wild nature, the cat had taken to her quickly, following her around as if it had always been a part of her life. But tonight was different. The cat meowed again, louder this time, and stood up, its tail flicking with agitation. It seemed restless, pacing back and forth, its eyes never leaving Beth. Something was wrong. She had always trusted this cat. It had an uncanny ability to sense things before they happened, and tonight it was clearly trying to communicate something. Beth stepped closer, unsure of what to do. "What's wrong?" she whispered, reaching down to pet the cat. The moment her fingers brushed its fur, she felt a strange jolt of energy, as if the animal was trying to tell her something important. Before she could process what was happening, there was a soft knock at the door. It was so quiet she almost thought she imagined it. But then it came again, more urgent this time. The cat's body tensed as it turned its head toward the door, its fur standing on end. Beth's breath caught in her throat. She had always trusted her instincts, but now everything felt off. Why would someone be knocking at her door in the dead of night? And why was the cat so agitated? Reluctantly, she moved toward the door, her hand trembling as she reached for the handle. Whatever was on the other side, she had a sinking feeling that her life was about to change forever. Who could be knocking at the door? And why does the cat seem so on edge? What's going to happen next? And why is the cat so certain that something is coming? Don't miss the next minutes of this mystery. Like, share, and comment your thoughts below to stay in the loop. Beth's hand hovered over the door handle, her fingers trembling slightly. The air in the room had shifted. Felt thicker, almost as if something invisible were pressing in around her. The cat, still standing near the door, seemed completely still for a moment, its amber eyes now glowing in the dim light. It was almost like it could sense the presence of something or someone on the other side. Beth had never felt more certain of anything in her life. Whatever was coming, she wasn't ready for it. Another knock sounded, louder this time, more urgent. Beth's heart raced. She looked down at the cat again. It stared back at her, its gaze unblinking, almost as if it were waiting for her to make the decision. She swallowed hard and, taking a deep breath, turned the handle. The door creaked open slowly, revealing the darkened night outside. The wind rustled the leaves of the trees, and the air smelled faintly of earth and rain. There was no one standing there, nothing but the eerie silence of the night. But something felt off. As she stepped out onto the porch, her eyes scanned the darkness, looking for any sign of movement. The cat, now beside her, suddenly stiffened, its tail flicking rapidly. It let out a low growl, something it had never done before. Beth's breath caught in her throat. "What's wrong?" she whispered to the cat, but it didn't answer. Instead, it darted toward the side of the house, its paws moving swiftly, its body low to the ground. It stopped abruptly by the edge of the porch, staring into the shadows as if it had just caught a glimpse of something, someone, moving in the distance. Beth felt her heart drop into her stomach. Something was out there, she could feel it in the pit of her stomach. And then, before she could process it any further, a voice cut through the silence. A voice she didn't recognize. "I know you're in there." The voice called softly but firmly. "I've been waiting for you." Beth froze. The voice wasn't loud, but it was unmistakable. It carried a tone of finality, of something that couldn't be ignored. She turned slowly, looking at the cat, whose fur was now standing on end. It had stopped growling, but its eyes were wide, its pupils dilated. It wasn't just the cat that was on edge. Beth could feel her entire body tensing, as if the world had shifted into something dangerous. A shadow appeared in the distance, moving slowly, steadily toward her. She couldn't make out who or what it was, but she could feel it drawing closer with every second. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up. This was no ordinary visitor. And with the cat acting so strange, she couldn't help but wonder if this had something to do with it. Before she could react, The shadow emerged from the dark, stepping into the pale moonlight. It was a man, tall, wearing a long coat that billowed slightly in the wind. His face was partially obscured, but his eyes, dark and intense, were locked onto her with an unshakable focus. "Beth," the man said, his voice calm yet laced with an unsettling certainty. "You have something I need." Beth's pulse quickened. What did he mean? What could she possibly have that he wanted? And why had the cat reacted this way? Who is this mysterious man, and why is he so sure that Beth has something he needs? What does the cat know that Beth doesn't? Stay tuned to find out what happens next in this thrilling encounter. Beth's heartbeat hammered in her chest as the man took another step toward her. The cat, still standing rigidly by her side, let out a low growl, its fur bristling. The man's eyes flicked briefly to the animal before returning to Beth. He didn't seem fazed by the cat's display of aggression. In fact, his calm demeanor only made Beth feel more uneasy. There was something about him that felt wrong, like he didn't belong in this quiet world she'd known. "What do you want?" Beth finally managed to ask, her voice coming out steadier than she felt. Her gaze darted from the man to the cat and back to the stranger. Her mind raced with questions. How did he know her name? Why had he come here? And most unsettling of all, why was the cat acting so protective? The man stopped a few feet from her, his figure still largely cloaked in shadow. "I'm here for the artifact," he said, his voice smooth but firm. "You have something that belongs to me." The word artifact echoed in Beth's mind, but it didn't make sense. She had nothing that could be described as an artifact. She was just a simple woman living a quiet life, surrounded by the mundane details of everyday life. But something in the way the man spoke, something in his certainty, made her wonder if she had been wrong all along. The cat hissed again, its tail lashing. It was clear that it wasn't going to back down. Beth could feel the tension rising in the air, thick and suffocating. The man looked down at the animal, but there was no fear in his eyes, only something darker, something more calculating. "Don't be foolish," he warned, his voice colder now. "I know you're connected to it. You can't hide it from me." Beth's pulse quickened. Connected to it? What was he talking about? What did she have to do with anything? She glanced at the cat, whose gaze was now fixed on the man, eyes narrowed. There was no doubt in her mind that the animal knew more than it was letting on. Without thinking, she stepped back into the house, trying to create some distance between herself and the stranger. She couldn't let him in. Not yet. She had to think, had to figure out what was really happening. The door creaked closed behind her, but she left it cracked open, just enough to see him standing there, watching her every move. The cat immediately sat down by the door, its posture stiff and alert. It wasn't just guarding her, it was guarding something. But what? What was hidden within her home that the man seemed to want so desperately? Suddenly, a flash of memory hit her. There was a small box, hidden away in her attic, a box that had belonged to her grandmother. It had always been locked, and her grandmother had warned her never to open it. Beth had almost forgotten about it, dismissing it as nothing more than a trinket. But now, with the man outside and the cat's strange behavior, it seemed like more than just a family heirloom. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing on her. What was this artifact? Why had her grandmother kept it locked away? And most importantly, why had it drawn this man to her doorstep? With a deep breath, Beth turned and quickly headed for the attic. What is the artifact, and why is it so important to the mysterious man outside? What does Beth's grandmother know about it? Will Beth uncover the truth before it's too late? Beth climbed the narrow stairs to the attic, her footsteps slow and deliberate. Her mind was spinning with questions, each one more pressing than the last. The artifact, her grandmother's warning, it was all starting to come together, but the pieces didn't fit. Why had the man sought her out? And why did the cat seem to know something she didn't? The attic was cold and dimly lit, the only light coming from a small window near the eaves. Dust hung in the air, swirling around the edges of forgotten boxes and old furniture. Beth's eyes scanned the room, searching for the small wooden box she had tucked away all those years ago. She hadn't thought about it in so long, but now, it was the only thing that seemed to matter. She reached the far corner of the attic, where a heavy old chest stood against the wall. She had always kept her grandmother's things inside it: photographs, keepsakes, and the box. It wasn't much, but it was all that was left of her after she passed. Beth knelt down, her fingers trembling as she opened the chest. Her heart skipped a beat as she spotted the small, intricately carved box nestled among the other items. It looked ordinary enough, nothing special, nothing that would explain the man's obsession, but something about it felt different now. Beth took a deep breath and reached for the box, her hands shaking. As soon as her fingers brushed the surface, she felt a jolt of energy, a spark that made her skin tingle. Her breath caught in her throat. Was it possible? Could this really be what the man was after? With hesitation, she lifted the box, feeling its weight in her hands. It was heavier than she remembered, as though something inside it had shifted over time. The intricate designs on the surface seemed to glow faintly in the low light, casting strange, shifting shadows across the walls of the attic. Her grandmother had always been so secretive about this box, never letting anyone open it, never even telling Beth what was inside. But now, standing here with the man's voice echoing in her mind, she realized that it had always been more than just a keepsake. The cat's urgent meowing echoed in her thoughts. Beth could feel its eyes on her, as if it were watching her every move. She turned the box over in her hands, running her fingers along the smooth surface, searching for any clue that might explain its significance. But there was nothing. Just the delicate carvings and the weight of something hidden inside. The knock on the door echoed through the house again, louder this time. The man outside was still waiting, still watching, and Beth knew she had no more time to hesitate. She couldn't open the box here in the attic without knowing the full truth. Her decision was clear. She had to face him. The cat was right. It wasn't just about hiding anymore. It was about discovering what lay hidden and what was at stake if she didn't act. Beth made her way back down the stairs, the box clutched tightly in her hands. She passed the cat, who now stood at the bottom of the stairs, watching her with knowing eyes. As she reached the door, she heard the man's voice again, calling to her softly from the porch. "I know you have it, Beth. The time has come to return what's mine." Beth's hand trembled on the doorknob. She had no idea what was coming next, but she knew one thing. This was only the beginning. Why is the man so desperate to get the box, and what will happen when Beth finally opens it? What secrets is the box hiding, and how does it connect to her grandmother's past? Beth stood in the doorway, the box still clutched tightly in her hands. The man outside, now standing in full view, was staring at her with an unsettling intensity. His gaze seemed to pierce through her, as though he could see the thoughts racing through her mind. The cat, standing at her feet, was almost eerily still, waiting, watching. The air was thick with the weight of the moment. Beth had no more time to hesitate. The man took a step closer, his voice soft but laden with an unspoken threat. "I know you're afraid, Beth, but you don't have a choice. You must return what's mine." Beth's heart pounded in her chest. She didn't know how he knew about the box or what he was truly after, but there was something in his eyes, something that told her this wasn't a simple request. This was dangerous. The cat, however, had never been more still, its amber eyes fixed on the man. Beth had never seen it so calm, so resolute. The man took another step forward, and Beth, against all her instincts, stepped out onto the porch, meeting him halfway. Her fingers tightened around the box, almost as if the weight of it could somehow offer her protection. She wasn't sure what would happen if she opened it, but she knew it was inevitable. She had to understand what the man wanted and what this box was truly about. "Please, just tell me what you want," she whispered, her voice shaking but determined. The man's expression softened for a brief moment, but only for a fraction of a second. Then he raised his hand and gestured to the box. "Inside it is the key," he said, his voice cold and final. "The key to everything, and you're the one who holds it." Beth's mind spun. The key to everything? The box wasn't just a trinket. It was something far more significant than she had ever realized. Her grandmother had known, had kept it hidden for a reason. It wasn't meant for just anyone. It was meant for her. But why? Before she could speak, the man's voice cut through her thoughts again. "Don't make the mistake of thinking you can run from this, Beth. The past has caught up with you." The cat hissed again. this time louder, its tail flicking in agitation. It was as if the creature knew this was the moment of truth, the moment that everything would either be revealed or lost forever. Beth felt the heavy weight of the box in her hands, and for a brief moment she considered running. But deep down, she knew she couldn't escape it. Not anymore. She had to face whatever lay inside that box, no matter the cost. Taking a deep breath, Beth opened the box, her eyes fixed on the man. And as the lid creaked open, the world seemed to stop. Inside, nestled carefully in velvet, was a small, glowing stone, an ancient relic, pulsing with an energy she could feel even without touching it. The stone shimmered in the dim light, almost alive. The air crackled with a strange, powerful force.